Have you ever wondered how authors can break through the media noise and build an award-winning publicity campaign that hooks journalists in seconds and drives real book sales? Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by PR powerhouse Liz Kelly, here to help us understand this piece of a successful writing business. Liz is the founder of Goody PR, creator of the Goody Business Book Awards, and author of award-winning Publicity and 8-Second PR. With over 20 years of experience landing authors on Today, CNN, and NPR, Liz knows exactly how to turn a book into a national media sensation. If you've ever wondered how to stand out in a crowded market and craft a publicity campaign that actually sells books, you are in for a treat. Liz, thank you so much for taking the time to spend some time teaching us how to apply publicity to our writing businesses. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Laura, for having me. And I'm blushing after you read that bio, but it all comes from the heart. I really do care because as an author of 3 books, and we'll talk about some of that, I know how hard it is to be an author and promote your work. So I'm happy to.
So in your book, The Award-Winning Publicity, you talk about finding your story magic. What's the key to taking an author's core thesis or personal story and framing it so journalists immediately want to cover it?
That is a great question. And I think it's something that I work really hard with authors on. And you can read the award-winning Publicity chapter on this, and that'll help you a lot too. But the secret is you need to find something unique and something that only you can tell, and something that will emotionally connect and get people to say, what was that about? And it's basically you want to be a water cooler topic. So for example, I just worked with a client who has written a book called Mindset in Motion. It's all about how to get out there and network and get your business moving. But there's a lot of books about that. So I read her book and read it several times to find that story magic. And she had this unique thing called a lock-in morning routine. And then I talked to her about, let's come up with 3 tips, because reporters want to hear tips. They don't want to hear how great you are. They want to hear how can you help their audience with something unique that they never heard before. So we turned this lock-in morning routine into 3 key tips and steps, and that's what got her a major TV interview.
That's wonderful. I love that idea of really looking and narrowing it down to what is not only very important piece of her story, but is very promotable. I really like that. That's really helpful.
Exactly. And everybody has a story like that. There's a different author I'm working with right now. He's written a book that's kind of the history of religion in the United States. It's called A Democratic and Republican Faith. And it's kind of heavy, but there is a story in there about what we're calling the forgotten founding father. His name was John Witherspoon, and he was the only member of the clergy that actually signed the Declaration of Independence. And he was an advocate for separation of church and state. And he also taught James Madison, who wrote the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment. So it's kind of that nugget that I found, because the guy has a history in theology, PhD, which is, again, really heavy. But that's a wow story. That's a story magic, because he found that information. And I've asked 20 people, do you know who John Witherspoon is? And they all say no. So that's something different and unique that he can share. That's story magic.
That truly is. I have never heard that story. I would be interested in learning more about that. Wow. So authors often assume that national PR requires a massive budget or elite connections. How can writers use your 8 media boosters to build and execute a high-impact publicity campaign on their own?
Well, that is something every author wants to know. And so in our book, Award-Winning Publicity, For the listeners, there's 8 media boosters because it's 8 chapters. And all of these chapters are things like the Story Magic Booster, but there's also a creative campaign booster, media outreach booster. So it's things to help you get that national publicity. And in the media outreach booster, there are things about how do you come up with these story ideas and then how do you pitch the right reporter. So, for example, if you are pitching CNN, there are thousands of reporters that work for CNN, but maybe there's only a handful of reporters that specialize in health and wellness. So if your book's about health and wellness, you need to find that reporter, and then you need to write a personalized pitch email to them, which I explain how to do that. And then a lot of it is about follow-up. Many people don't understand that if they get a rejection or if they get a not now, they think that's the end of the conversation. It's really not, unless they say, I don't cover that topic, or I'm not doing that anymore. And then maybe your reply is, well, do you know anybody who I should contact? So it is a treasure hunt. It is about patience, persistence, and never being desperate. And that's really the top secret is you just don't want to give up and you have to keep trying. I get rejected all the time and I just pull myself up and say, okay, we have to go to the next one and just keep going. And it gets frustrating to a lot of people, but you don't have to hire a top publicist, but you do have to invest the time. And so a lot of people who hire my PR agency, it's called Goody PR, a lot of people who hire us are busy small business CEOs, and they have a book, but they don't have the time to do what I just described. For anybody listening who has time, go for it. This award-winning publicity book and all the tips are for you.
Yeah, it sounds really fascinating. And I'll be reading it myself because I would like to know more about how to, not just for the podcast, but for my own writing and also to share with writers as that comes into conversations. So it just sounds fascinating. So producers and reporters receive hundreds of pitches. What are the biggest mistakes authors make in their media outreach, other than the follow-up, which I know is a big mistake? And how can they capture a journalist's attention in those crucial first 8 seconds?
Yeah, I love that question because it is so hard and they are overwhelmed with all these emails and it's really hard to get them on the phone, although I encourage everybody to try to get them on the phone if you can. But to get their attention in 8 seconds, you want to write the headline for them. And so you have to think about if somebody is watching, say, the news and they say, coming up next, we're going to go over XYZ. That's what your headline is. And you need to come up with something catchy and unique. So it could be something like, I did one where it landed a lot of interviews and it was, why does it take 120 hours to train a service dog a behavior to help a veteran with PTSD? And people love that because I had a service dog trainer as the spokesperson, and she had a program where, for example, if a veteran was shaking their leg because they had PTSD, they would train the service dog to come up and put their paw on the leg to help calm the veteran down. So we had visuals. That's another big thing. You want to have visuals to back up your headline. And then you also want to have a story behind the story that is humble and helpful. So a lot of people, again, they just want to talk about how great they are, but you have to be able to show a vulnerable side and be able to say, hey, I made a mistake, or this is hard. My first book was a dating book. And there's a story about it in award-winning publicity. You can learn more, but basically I got laid off after 9/11 and decided to write something positive and use that downtime when I was job hunting to do something that I always wanted to do, which was publish a book. So in that process, that's how I got into PR, because I hired publicists. I took money out of my IRA to pay for the publicists. And then I also hired 3 media trainers because I did not know what I was doing. And one of the media trainers said to me, Liz, never go on TV and act like you know everything about dating, because nobody wants to hear from somebody that knows everything. So she said, the first thing you want to say is dating is hard. So I came up with this to provide comic relief. There was some humor in this book, but it's the same thing with anything. Right now, I'm telling you, PR is not easy. It's a marathon, not a sprint, but the key is not to give up. And so anyway, sharing those stories and showing vulnerability are the secrets that back up the headline that they can read in 8 seconds.
I can see how that's so effective, to be able to narrow it down and get the point across and give them the ability to see the story quickly. It's just got to be difficult to deal with their inbox.
One of the key tips that I would tell you is that when I send out a pitch email, that headline, I make it in 20-point font, and it's right up at the top, so that there's no question about what I am pitching, because it's hard to come up with that. And if you can come up with that headline and make it big and bold at the top, that will grab their attention. And then everything else, the stories, the tips, that goes underneath it. But a lot of them, all they're going to do is read that headline. So make it 20-point font.
That's smart too. I'm sure very often some reporters, producers, whatever, are not dealing with their own inboxes either. So you have to go through an additional person. So to be able to get through that person to the person that you actually want to deal with, you would have to use some type of attention grabbing structure to it. A block of text is not really of interest to most people. So I think that would be super effective. And I don't think that's the only place that would apply. I think there's many other places you could apply that same strategy when dealing with emails where you're trying to get somebody's attention without being intrusive. But yeah, I love that.
The other tip that I can share with the audience is that the subject line is obviously really important, because if the subject line doesn't include that media hook or that headline, then they may never open the email. And there's a couple of key things that I put in the subject line. One, I put in all caps, media alert, if it's about something that is newsworthy, that's just launched, or it's something very unique that's just been announced. So that's media alert. And then if you want a story that's more what I would call a human interest story that doesn't have to be done this week, then I use the word pitch, and I put pitch in all caps. And then I personalize it. So I'll say for CNN or for you, and then dash, and then I put the headline or the hook.
I get so many emails, and I am so guilty of looking at the subject line and deciding if I'm going to open it. You just get inundated day after day. So you founded the Goody Business Book Awards, and I'd love to hear more about that. And you did this to help authors stand out. So how can writers strategically leverage book awards and accolades to build authority and open doors to bigger press opportunities?
Absolutely. Well, I have a lot of author clients with Goody PR, and so many of them said to me, I want to get a book award, Liz. So I did extensive research on book awards, and I found an area that I did not think was having enough book awards, and that was business books. So that's why I started Goody Business Book Awards. It's also got a hot air balloon as the logo, and the tagline is uplifting author voices. And one of the reasons why we use that tagline is because the number of books that get published per year is astronomical. It's really hard to get an accurate number, but I do think it's something like 4,000 books a day, which is crazy off the charts on Amazon, and why sometimes they don't get back to you right away. But so anyway, we created these book awards, and then I nominate our authors for other book awards too, because there are three benefits. One, it can increase your credibility if you get a book award and help you stand out. So number two would be increase your thought leadership brand, which can help you get more media, because if a reporter is looking at your short bio and they're comparing you, say, as a leadership expert compared to another leadership expert, and if you've won book awards, that's going to make you stand out. And then the third benefit of book awards is that it can help you attract more book sales. And for Goody Business Book Awards, our deadline's coming up. It's September 30th. Then we do the judging and we announce the winners and the finalists by November 15th, so that then they can use that they're an award-winning author for holiday book sales. So it's right before Thanksgiving, all the winners and finalists get announced. And a lot of other book awards do that. And I highly recommend to all the authors out there, you should nominate for multiple book awards and multiple categories. Because, for example, our program has 50 categories, and we have 50 categories on purpose to increase your chances of winning. And there are 8 genres, things like business, health, money, marketing, self-help. Those are all subcategories, and then there's multiple categories within those. And for example, my book, the previous book, 8-Second PR, won an award in PR and communications in that category, which is perfect for me. So if you are a leadership expert or you have startups that you have done successfully, maybe you want to be in the startup category, I say the other thing is it helps you reach your niche audience because you get recognized within your area of expertise.
How long have you been doing these awards?
This is actually our 5th year, and it keeps growing, and we have authors from around the world. We get a lot from Australia and a lot from the UK, but really we get them from all over. And we have a year-round social media marketing program. And if one of our authors has something big happen to them and they post it on social media, we follow all of our authors and we start sharing their news. So it's really about building that community of authors supporting authors. And it's been great. It's been really fun to see the reaction. I've had people say, my book's dedicated to my mother and she's crying over this award. I mean, it's really heartfelt. And then I got a voicemail from an author in Australia just saying, thank you for liking our posts. She said she didn't think about becoming an award-winning author, but now she's so grateful that she did it. So when we get that kind of feedback, it makes it all worth
Certainly,
it.
I understand firsthand what a tremendous amount of work book awards are. I have a client of mine, a publishing organization, and they have a book awards they do each year. And there's just so much involved. That was a big undertaking for you.
I'm grateful that I have a board of advisors who are also publicists and media experts who do the judging, and then we do custom banners and we send everybody the awards seal. So we do a lot to promote our authors, and not every program does that, but we're really proud of that and use our marketing background to promote the heck out of the authors.
Love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So what is your best advice for authors looking to tie their book's message to break a news cycle or trending cultural conversations. We kind of touched on that a little bit, but could we go a little bit deeper?
Absolutely. In award-winning publicity, I describe this as something called newsjacking. And that is not my term. That's just an industry term. But newsjacking is about taking a current headline and then tying your story to it. So one of the biggest things that I love to do is I do a lot of research on all of our clients on national days and national months. So, for example, February is National Dog Training Month. And another publicist who I network with, I have a circle of publicists who I talk to almost every day, and she found that and sent it to me. So I got our service dog trainer on TV many times during February's National Dog Training Month. And then there are also specific days, and August, for example, also is Wellness Month. And I've had a lot of authors in the wellness space get on TV tied to whatever their topic is. One was a wisdom book. So she did a study and identified 8 elements of wisdom, and it's called Common Wisdom. And so we got a lot of publicity for her during August, during Wellness Month. Now, the other thing is you can just look at seasons. So, for example, the holidays is a very tough time for a lot of people, even though it's supposed to be the happiest time of the year. And it's especially hard for people dealing with addiction. So I worked with an addiction center called Warrior's Heart, and their COO happened to be an author who's written a faith-based book about how he was in prison twice during Christmas. And then he was reading the Bible, he got sober, and it changed his whole life. And he got out and got a job at the addiction center. And 8 years later, he's a COO. So it was a great success story. But what we did was the headline that we pitched CNN that they went for was how to deal with addiction over the holidays. So that's a seasonal tie that you can use. And there's always a season. When I wrote my dating book, which got 500 media interviews, which is why I do PR today, because I was like, I'm pretty good at this. I think I should do it for other people. But one of the key things I did with that dating book was I just kept coming up with things like in July, I could have done how to find your guy at a World Cup party. And then you do how to find a guy when you go back to school. You could do that in September. How to find a guy at a Christmas party. So I just made up stuff tied to the season and whatever was in the news, and it worked great, and a lot of people went for it.
I read a book several years ago, maybe even 10, and the name of it was Newsjacking. I've always tried to keep that in my back of my mind in the type of social media and promotions I do for myself and clients that I've worked with. And it's been really helpful. What is going on now that I can tie something to? It could be very effective.
Yeah, it's very important. And in award-winning publicity, there's a whole section on social media marketing, also digital marketing. And in that, I recommend that you create a content calendar. And for that calendar, you can research the days and the months and tie your content to that. So that's another tip in the book, but definitely for media interviews. And I've had situations go viral, and the book was actually inspired by an eclipse glasses campaign, which is not, there actually was an author. It was more for the eclipse glasses, but there was an author who had written a children's book, and it was called Journey to the Total Solar Eclipse. It was an illustrated book. But people loved that because when you talk about newsjacking, we could say, okay, we went to Fox Weather, for example, and we said this book is about what do you do if there's bad weather during the eclipse? And how do you try to be mobile and have a rent-a-car, for example, so that if the prediction is clouds, you can get in your car and go to where the prediction is going to be sun? So we got her a lot of interviews with actually meteorologists talking about that topic that you would not think about normally as an author. But you have to think about the subject. You have to think about what's going on in the headlines. In that case, it was a total solar eclipse of 2024. And it was a huge campaign. It won 6 PR industry awards. And that's where the title award-winning publicity came from. But yeah, there was definitely an author involved, definitely newsjacking.
That's a great story. What a neat way to put that all together. Oh, I love that. I love it. So landing an interview is only half the battle. How should authors amplify their media wins after the interview airs to drive long-term book sales and business growth? Because I think sometimes this is a big piece that's missed because there's not a lot of follow through after the interview. So could we take a little bit of a dive into that?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And what we talk about is you want to magnify your story. And by magnify, we mean create multiple pieces of content for one interview, especially if it's a top interview. So, for example, the author that I just described with the children's book that was on Fox Weather, that was a big deal because that was national TV. So you could then take that and create social media posts. And what I mean by that is I would create a reel and I would take images from that and screenshots from her interview and turn it into a slideshow reel that then I would post on Instagram. Then you can also get a copy of that interview and you can post it on YouTube. Or if they post it on YouTube, you share their link. And then you can also write a blog about it. And if it's a really big deal, for example, when I got my client on the Today Show, we actually sent out a press release. They were also in Time magazine in a feature story. So that was another example where we actually sent out a press release announcing that they were featured in Time magazine. So you really have to get creative and don't just share it one time. Share it everywhere. Share it on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, whatever are your most used social media. I say you should recommend or focus on 3 because otherwise it gets overwhelming. Right. But honestly, I probably am active on 5 social media, and that's really important. And people need to see your brand multiple times. So you have to be a little shameless, but at the same time, you can be humble and say things like, beyond grateful for this interview, or in case you need tips on whatever your book is about, in case you need tips, here are some answers for you so that you're speaking to the audience. But you really have to put yourself out there. Otherwise, there's a lot of noise and a lot of people may miss it.
A tremendous amount of noise. If you work towards a lot of your content asking questions that you then answer, now with the GEO, the generative AI, and everything that people are using to research the simplest things, instead of going to the Google search, that's really helpful. If you put things in a form of a question that somebody would ask, and then you provide the information. So that's always a great way to handle it.
No, that is a great tip. And one of the things that I do for SEO, search engine optimization, which I believe is still important because it all feeds into AI, and I've seen it, is you ask a question. So, for example, my book's been out a couple months, but nowhere did I have anything that says, what is award-winning publicity? And I thought to myself, this is crazy because that's what people would search on. So I did a video that's called What is Award-Winning Publicity? And so now if you search award-winning publicity, it comes up in the AI, it comes up in the website postings below. But then you also click on video in Google search, and the video's right at the top. And then you click on images, and the images are right at the top. So it's really important because people look at things differently, they learn differently, that you have all types of content, which includes the written format in blogs and press releases and news stories, and then the images, and then the videos. All three are really important.
Well, that's great. So let me ask you a question. So your book business came before the PR business, correct?
My first entry into this book world was the dating book. And I went to a lot of book marketing seminars, and I actually spoke on stage with Mark Victor Hansen, who wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, about my book marketing success by applying their skills. So that was step one. And then step two was starting my PR agency. And then step three was starting the book awards.
When you started your book business, what was the thing that you struggled with the most?
I think the thing I struggled with the most was it was a little overwhelming. And so that's why it was really important to get help from experts. And one of the key advice tips that I got from Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield and other book experts was just do one thing a day. If you're overwhelmed, if you're doing a day job, which I was at the time, then just make it a habit to do at least one thing a day to promote your book. And then you build that momentum and you build that marathon. But I think that was kind of hard, and it was a lot of moving pieces. And this was 2002 when I wrote the first version of this book, and websites were clunky and hard to do. So I hired somebody to do that. That was kind of hard and laughable today because it's so easy to put up a website and update it. So I think those are the hard parts. And then coming up with the messaging. And fortunately, again, I got a lot of help from media coaches who taught me how to come up with these timely hooks and how to try to break through. So it's a journey. It's a journey. And the other thing that a lot of people don't understand who are authors is that writing the book is really important, and you have to write it with marketing in mind. And then the promotion is just as important as writing the book. So what happens is a lot of authors will come to us with a book and they haven't had marketing in mind, and there's no unique story in there. And so I have to work with them to find the unique story. And then we might go back and add a preface to the book with that unique story so that then I can go promote that. And then again, a lot of people, they'll call Goody PR 1 week before their book is launching in a panic. And so that's a mistake too. You really want to start promoting at least 3 months before you launch your book.
My advice is always start promoting your book while you're writing it. Start building your platform and getting people interested in the subject you're writing about, whether you're a fiction author or a nonfiction author. I love the advice of do at least one thing a day to promote your book, because that's so important to try to be consistent and build that momentum. If you're on social media 1 month consistently and then people don't see you for 3 months, you don't stay in people's minds. They move on to other things.
Exactly. And everybody's busy. We're all busy, but you have to try to prioritize, because I tell people you worked really hard on that book. So you don't want to get to the finish line, promote it, and then do nothing. And the other tip that I would give authors that is one of my pet peeves is don't publish your book and then have no book reviews. it's really important if you're on Amazon to ask your friends and family to start posting book reviews, because if somebody goes to your book and you have 0 book reviews, or let's say you have 2 book reviews, people are not going to necessarily get that book unless they know you. And so you really have to invest time and encourage people to write a book review. And Amazon is being really picky. They're reviewing every review right now. And sometimes it can take 4 days now to get a review approved. But it's really important. You have to prioritize that.
Putting in the effort to get the reviews is worth every minute of your time. Tell me about the services that you offer at Goody PR.
Sure. Well, we offer 2 levels of VIP services. And the reason why we're offering 2 levels is because the first level is the pre-launch phase, because we think that is so important for getting your marketing plan, coming up with a business plan so you have multiple streams of income coming in, and really focus on the branding and what's the content in the book. So we work with authors up to a year before they publish a book. And then phase 2 that we offer is a PR and marketing program. When you're getting ready to launch, we would like to work with you at least 3 to 6 months before you publish. But we've worked with authors who published a book 5 years ago, or in most cases, it's a couple months after they launch their book with their publisher. Because what happens is, and this is really important for authors listening, is that your publisher will say, oh, we will do your PR, and they will not. And so what happens is the authors call me and they say, Liz, they promised me they were going to do our PR, and they're doing nothing. So we need to hire you yesterday. So that happens too. And then there's a lot of different things we do. It's everything from building your press kit, your branding, your website. We'll help you get book reviews, help you get speaking engagements and book talks, which is very popular. A lot of people want to do that. And then the earned media, which is TV, radio, print, and podcasts. And we provide media training, and that's really important too, because when you get to the interview, you need coaching on what's the best way to be clear, concise, and compelling. I had a client who will remain nameless because I never say anything negative about clients and use their name, but they had a radio interview, and the host said, okay, give me the 30-second overview of your book. And this person really stumbled. So we went back, gave them more media coaching. And that's something that people like to take a long time to tell their story. And you can't do that on a media interview because people have short attention spans and they want you to get to the point right away. So media training is very helpful for that. One guy had his first TV interview, and he was really nervous. So I practiced with him for 3 hours. And that was a lot. And then 5 days later, because he had the wrong equipment, and you definitely want the right equipment, he had to go get a new microphone, a new camera, a new light. He said, I want to do it again. So then we practiced again for 3 hours. So it was a total of 6 hours. But by the time he got to the live TV interview, he nailed it. And so it was worth it. So everybody's different, but don't make the mistake of telling people you don't need media training, because I've had that happen too. And that's usually a disaster. What I find is that the people who say, no, I don't need media training, are the CEOs, or in one case, a former GM. So they're used to having a lot of power, a lot of people that they manage, and they're not used to getting advice. And so those leaders sometimes resist, and then they stumble. And I had somebody on live TV once, and they refused media training. And they actually picked up a piece of paper and started reading their notes during the interview. And I literally just had to take a pause. And then the next time he said, okay, I want media training. So we did media training the day before he had a national interview on CNN, and he did a great job. So it really can make a big difference.
Yeah. 100 years ago, I worked in radio and also produced a couple of my own shows. I learned a lot back then that I now try to use. It's not easy to sit at an interview. I think it's easier to be the interviewer than to be the interviewee. The interviewee doesn't have as much control unless they're well trained, and then they can have better control of the interview. It's well worth taking the time to get coached.
Exactly. It's so worth it. I continue to try to evolve and get even better. And one of the key tips that I know we're running out of time, I want to get in is something called the rule of threes that I talk about in award-winning publicity. And that is, if you can give 3 examples or say the top 3 things are, that's very effective in interviews. So all of the chapters in award-winning publicity include 3 tips for that reason and examples. But people walk by, I'll record videos outside my place sometimes because I want to do it outside. And one woman stopped me one day and she said, I can't do that. And I said, just come up with 3 key points and just get to those 3 key points. And so that's a really top tip that I wanted to share.
You have to start with a message. And almost everything that you've said today, Liz, goes back to that, is make sure you understand the message and take the time to break it down to where it is easier for other people to understand and to want to hear more, because that's what your goal is. Radio people and TV people are on a time constraint, and they don't want people to turn off the dial, change the channel, or click away from them. I appreciate you taking time with me today, Liz. This has been wonderful, and I can't wait to go through your book. I would love to hear more about your ideas. You gave me a lot to think about. Tell everybody how to find you, because I am sure that there's so many of us that can use this information and need that type of help with publicity.
Well, thank you, Laura, for having me. And it was just a great conversation. And if anybody wants to learn more, the book website is awardwinningpublicity.com, or our PR agency is Goody with a Y, goodypr.com.
All right. Thank you. I'll make sure that I put that information in the show notes. To learn more about the podcast and to sign up to be the first to learn when new episodes are up, visit thewritingbiz.com. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe. It means everything to me. Thank you to all of you for helping to make this show a success. I appreciate it in the deepest parts of my soul. Until next time, take what you've learned and put it to work in your own writing biz. Liz, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, and good luck to all the authors out there. You can do it. Get your story out there. Don't give up.